Well, good morning. Welcome to EXSIN Live. Today we're going to talk about an interesting thing that made the news. It's on the sports side, but it applies to your business. And the question for every business owner out there today is, do you think you have a talent problem or do you think you have a culture problem? I'm going to argue this. I'm going to argue that I think that businesses that are struggling with people have a culture problem. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, I think most of it's always culture. It's blocking and tackling, right? To use the old corny football analogy. But, you shared a video with me this morning, ironically enough, about culture. Of the offensive line coach at the University of Texas expressing his displeasure with how people were okay with losing after a game and they lost their fourth straight. I think that's a very good I think it's a very good example of frustration leaders can feel when they don't feel that their culture is where it needs to be. Now, the irony in that is, I think a lot of people think it's all the leaders' responsibility to create culture. It's the leaders' responsibility to cast a vision of the culture. It's the leader's responsibility to set an example for that culture. But if everybody else isn't pulling the rope in the same direction, then you have a culture problem. And there's a lot of variables go into that, but there's a lot of terms for it right now in the world. People are soft, people are this, people are that. I think it still comes down to culture, and are people really bought into the team and to the why an organization does what they do.
Well, I think this has been spawned from 8th place ribbons when kids are 5 years old. I think this has spawned from not holding people to a higher standard. An NFL player said on the video, he goes, the most disappointing thing about that video is that a player didn't do that. It took a coach to do that to solve the problem because the team's not policing themselves. And what I would argue or say in this context is that if you have a sales team that doesn't want to sell and doesn't want to win, that's a problem. They should be pushing each other to sell and win. You should tell them this is our goal, and they should be competing against each other to win. But unfortunately, I think society today thinks that competition is bad. What do you think about that, Phil?
There's no doubt about that. I've been, and I want to say this up front. My wife and I are big supporters of the YMCA, our local YMCA. We do. I just got my invoice for our annual contribution in the email yesterday. Wonderful organization, does a lot of good work. But I've been calling it the YMCA mentality for years. Everybody's a winner. Everybody gets a trophy. It's the same trophy. We don't want anybody to stand out above other people. And that's counter to how the real world freaking works. We can live in a fairy tale if you want. Just don't ask me to participate in your fairy tale. Because the truth is that the world is competitive. The truth is that you do have to get up every day and do some things you don't necessarily like to do to accomplish your goals. The truth is it does come at a price. You don't just get to wish something into reality. You don't just get to say, geez, I want a successful business where I have some time to go and do things with my family and to give to these great organizations and to do all these wonderful things without paying a price to get there. That doesn't exist, and so I think there's too much of a fairy tale mentality in our country to where we just wish things to be and we think they should be that way. And that isn't how it works. And I know that offends a ton of people, would offend a lot of people in my own family, but that is the truth. You have to get up and go earn it every day. And to earn it, you have to be competitive. That doesn't mean you have to be cold-blooded and nasty and terrible and treat people bad. That doesn't mean any of those things. But if you think it's just going to come true because you want it, boy, baby, I'll pray for you because you're going to have a rough road ahead.
Well, I love that analogy and that discussion. I shared the story with a minute ago. I'm going to share with everybody else. So in 1985, the NUS Owls went to Tupelo, Mississippi, and played a football game, and we lost. And on the drive from Tupelo to Memphis, which is about an hour and 20 minutes, the football team thought it'd be a good idea to sing and have fun the whole day, much like these Texas players did after a loss. We acted a fool. Monday morning, we showed up at practice, stepped into the film room. Bobby Do-Right Austin, coach, started the film, didn't hit stop. Went straight through. We were done with the film in 20 minutes. He put us on the line outside after the game. He goes, you think that's funny? Good, better, best, let it never rest. Your good is better and your better best, and blew the whistle. We did that 50 times around that field. I didn't tell you the second half of that story. The 1985 NUS Owls won a state championship.
Yeah.
Because Coach reframed our focus and made us understand how it's not acceptable to not perform your best every day. And I've carried that lesson with me my entire life. So I hope these kids at Texas turn the light on and figure it out, because that coach was trying to do them a favor.
Well, somebody made a comment to me I was talking to that saw the video also. They said, well, do you think that coach is in trouble? I said, in today's world, who knows? But what they should be doing is, how can we make him a coordinator? Somebody needs to hire that guy and make him a head coach, because he's passionate about helping these kids get better. Listen, what people are going to be upset about is the language he used.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, if words hurt you that much, again, good luck. You know, again, I'm not saying be mean to people, but you've got to react in correlation with what the situation dictates. You don't have to be a screamer and a yeller. Those things usually don't work, but you got to understand the context. The context is that it's a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds playing a sport. Okay. Now, that coach was trying to coach them up, as they say, right? Trying to get their attention. When he started out by saying, some of you expletives should enter the transfer portal, he was trying to get their attention. And I guarantee you he did. Did you hear anybody talking when he was talking? Nobody was saying a word, because they were all scared to death. Because he basically said, listen, you don't want to be here, then enter the transfer portal and leave. I mean, and I promise you, for most of those elite athletes, the first time anybody's ever probably told them that in their life. You know, one of the unfortunate things in society, and I'm not blaming the youth. I blame my generation for this. We're the ones that raised these kids. This isn't their fault. You know, go look in the mirror. You know, and it's not everybody our age that's done this, but we're the ones that have allowed this culture to become so prevalent in our society, to where, you know, nothing should be hard, nothing should come with sacrifice, everything should just be just handed to us. It's not how it works. For darn sure not how it works in business.
Nope.
You think you can just wish something true in business and survive? Come on now. I mean, that's not how it works. I mean, Jeff Bezos, I'll use Jeff Bezos, I'll use Elon Musk, and I'll use Warren Buffett as an example. Elon Musk and Warren Buffett can't stand each other. They don't like each other. They both have said that. They don't like each other. They're not supportive of each other. I mean, they just don't like each other, right? If you think Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos like each other, you're not paying attention. So what is that going to, you know, what does that spark? It sparks this competition in these guys. These guys are all type A, driven to the max, sleep in their factory. I mean, insane commitment to their cause. That's why they're worth hundreds of billions of dollars, right? I mean, I just read this morning, Elon Musk lost $50 billion in the last 2 days. I said, well, don't get too worried. He's still worth $82 billion personally, and a week from now he'll probably make $100 billion. You know, so but if you live in that kind of world, you don't get to live in that kind of world because you want to go home at night when it says 5 on the clock, or, well, it's the weekend. What do you want to do this weekend? Or, oh, you know, I want to go have dinner with my friends tonight. Now, I'm not saying that they're right. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that's everybody holds them up as these ultra successful people, these geniuses, these thought leaders, all these great things. Well, it didn't just happen. They paid a massive price for 30, 40, 50, Warren Buffett's case, 60 years. You know, I mean, so everything. Now, that's an extreme example, but look at a small business. We wanted to go out and have dinner last night as a family. So we went out to a restaurant with one of our clients, and they're the owners, and they're there at 8 o'clock at night. I mean, they start at 5:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And they'll do that many times, 7 days a week. Most people don't have that in them to do it. And again, I'm not saying that makes that person a lesser person or a weak person, or I'm not saying that. It's just you got different, obviously you have different priorities, but to build a culture as a leader, you've got to set the example. To build a culture as a leader, you got to cast a vision. And when people aren't following that, and when people aren't doing things necessary, as a leader, you got to have the courage to sit down and have a conversation with them and say, hey, listen, this is where we're heading. You're not doing that right now. Why is that? And if they say, I don't believe in it, we'll tell them, hey, man, take 30 days and find a new place to go every day. Because it's if they're not willing to do that, then it's going to destroy your culture. If you have a mid-level leader that is not following what the culture is because they think they know better, if they won't correct that, if they won't come in line, you're going to have to change. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, there's no substitute for believing in your cause. There's no substitute for it.
Well, and I think we deal with a lot of business owners that don't understand their role, and they get in the business, they forget that their job is to set a vision, set and maintain high standards. So give your team the path to success, right? So this is kind of the help. How do you build that culture? Well, you have to define it, right? You have to lay out the responsibility to hold them accountable for excellence in everything they do. And then when they don't, you got to coach them up, right? And if they can't be coached up, like you said, it's time to move them along. You give them a few chances to get coached up. And if they can't fall in line, then, hey, man, it's been great, but you're not a fit for this culture, this team. And if you have somebody go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
But if you have somebody in the organization that's a cancer, I mean, cancer surgery, you cut that cancer out and everything around it's been touched by it to get rid of it. So it doesn't affect the entire organization. The sooner you do that, the sooner you have a chance of success. The longer you let that cancer fester in your organization, the more challenging it's going to be for you to rebuild your culture and get it back on track.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, you can look at your top salespeople in organizations. We'll use them for an example. You know, a lot of times the top salespeople in every organization is the biggest pain in the butt because they know they're the top revenue generator in the organization. I mean, they know it. And so most people don't have the confidence or the belief in their culture and the belief in their system to sit down with that top revenue generator and say, hey, you know, we got to figure out a way to make this work. Right. You know, we've got a client that he asked our help to kind of establish a new culture in their organization. And I set him down and I said, well, okay, but that means you're going to have to do all these things. I mean, if you're not willing to do them yourself, you can't ask other people to do them. I mean, it's, you know, leading an organization's not complicated. It's just really, really hard.
It is hard.
Right. I mean, it's not complicated to know what you need to do. It's just really, really hard to do it. You know, I mean, we saw it in the military in our careers, you know, where you'd have what most people would say would be unreasonable, I'll call them requests. They weren't requests, they're called orders, but unreasonable orders in the military, right? And most people would look at it and go, well, that's crazy. Well, is that crazy, or is that an opportunity to do something so epic people will talk about it for the next 100 years? I mean, you know, again, it goes back to what are you willing to do? What price are you willing to pay? What are you willing to sacrifice to get this done? Sacrifice, you know, motivation's one thing, discipline's another. Yep. You can be motivated in the moment, but if you don't have the disciplines to execute on it consistently, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You can go to all those seminars and workshops and all the rah-rah sessions you want, and you can watch Tony walk across burning coals. But at some point, you're going to have to put your butt back in the car or put your butt back on an airplane and go back home, and you're going to have to execute on the stuff that, now, nothing he told you is wrong. I mean, nothing he told you is wrong. But if you're not willing to go execute on it, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. There's not a shortage of ideas of what needs to be done. There's a shortage of execution to get it done in our world. And that's the thing that you've got to understand. You know, I've put on a couple LBs here in the last several months. And I'd sit around and complain about it. Oh, I'm tired and I don't feel good. Well, guess what? I started going back to the gym. I started working out again. I changed the way I'm eating. I'm doing the things that I know will work. It's not, everybody knows what they need to do. Are you willing to go do it? I mean, so don't complain if somebody asks you to do something multiple times and you haw around about it and go, yeah, I know that's important. Yeah, I know I need to do that. And you never do it. Eventually they're going to come at you like the offensive line coach from the University of Texas and tell you to enter your butt in the transfer portal. But only they're going to say you need to go somewhere else and work. I mean, it's just, that's the reality. Now, again, I'm not sitting there saying that you need to be a screamer. I think screamers in the workplace are horrible. It's a short-term solution to what usually is a very big problem. You might get them in line for a couple days or a few days because they're basically in shock that you just handed their head to them. But you're not going to change behavior typically just by screaming at somebody. All you're going to do usually is build a bigger wedge, right, between leadership and front line.
Yeah, and I think there's something I learned many years ago in the military, and it applies to business. Emotion should only ever be used for effect, right? If you're going to get emotional in a situation, it's to have a specific impact at a specific moment, but you have to keep it under control. So if you're screaming all the blankety blanks in the world for effect, and you can control yourself and to get somebody's attention, there's something to be said for that. It does work. But if you're doing that all the time, it's just like if you're the parent that yells at your kid all the time, eventually they go, yeah, dad, whatever. That's all. It's a
toothless dog. Yep. It's a toothless dog. You've seen me do this in situations with clients where I've slammed the table and.
Well, that one time you threw that guy out the window was a little over the top, but it's
window was it was open.
It was open.
But I think there's, you're right about the effect. If you're trying to just snap somebody out of something, sure, but you got to very quickly come right behind, put an arm around them and say, hey, listen, how can we figure out the best way to move forward?
Yep.
Yeah. And again, I've said this countless times, your employees have the answers. Your job is to help them get to a place where they can speak them or hear them either internally or externally and start executing on changing the behavior. That's your job as a leader. Early on in my military career, I had a wee bit of a problem of wanting to scrap all the time when I was younger. And my Colonel Carson, one day brought me in his office. He said, did you get in another altercation? I said, yes, sir. He said, are you ever going to grow the hell up? And I went, ugh. He talked to me like a dad. He just said, when are you going to grow up? He said, you're this trained professional now. You're supposed Matt, no, you fight, never.
Matt was right by your side, brother.
Matt and I grew up together, in case anybody's wondering. But at some point, he said, you're a trained professional. We have higher expectations of our people than you being a knucklehead, knuckle dragging idiot that goes out in the bars on Saturday nights and tries to prove to everybody how tough you are. Why don't you try just being a man and being a professional? Let that speak for itself, right? Pretty good advice. So everybody's got to get slapped in the face that, sometimes to get them on track. I read something yesterday and it stuck with me. It was a gentleman that's in his late 50s now, so about my age, a couple years older than me. And he's in phenomenal condition. And he was asked one time why he works so hard to stay, because he looks like he's 25. I mean, this guy's just, and he's not a bodybuilder. He's just one of these guys that's in great fitness and does ultra marathons and does this barbaric strength conditioning training. And he's just in great health. And he said, my dad told me young, one of the worst things about getting old is when you realize you're not a threat anymore. When people look at you and don't go, okay, I need to pay attention to this guy, right? He doesn't mean literally. I mean, you don't want people going through life being scared of you, but you do want people to have a respect for who you are and what you do. Now the physical's the easy part, right? It's easy. You go build your muscles and you're a big person. And I don't care who you are, people notice that, right? That's easy to do. But be a threat mentally, be a threat emotionally, be a threat as a team member, be a threat as a leader, meaning they always know that you know what you're doing. They always know that you have a purpose. They always know that you're relevant. And this applies to just to be clear, when I say man, this applies to all people, men, women, I don't care who. Be a threat. Be a threat professionally. Again, you don't have to be a jerk to be a threat professionally. You have to be able to be relevant. And when we give that up as a human being, man, woman, it doesn't matter. When we give that up as a human being of being a threat, go pack it in, move to Florida because you're done. Go pack it in. And again, that time comes for everybody. Warren Buffett, how old's Warren Buffett? 80-some years old, right? Is Warren Buffett still a threat? You damn right he is. Now some could argue he's a threat in a lot of ways. But he is relevant. He is still a thought leader. So there is no expiration date. There's an expiration date if you allow one to be put on your life. You can Dave, you and I talk about this all the time. I have zero desire to retire. I want to retire the day they throw dirt on me and go eat potato salad. That's the day I want to retire. I always want to have a purpose. I always want to have a reason. I always want to know what my why is. I always want to understand, why I'm doing this, or, I want people to understand that, hey, he's still relevant. He's still relevant. He's still out there fighting, or she's still out there fighting. One of the toughest people I know is my wife. And she's tough for a few reasons. Number one, she's been married to me for 34 years, but she's really tough because she's mentally one of the toughest human beings I've ever met, and scared of absolutely nothing, which scares me sometimes because she's scared of nothing. but it's because she's intellectually a warrior. She's emotionally a warrior. She's spiritually a warrior. She's a warrior by nature. That's who she is. She does. And those of you that know my wife, she's not threatening physically. She's not threatening with the way she talks. She's not in your face. Is she, Dave?
No.
I mean, nope. She's just but I can promise you, she's a warrior. Okay. So it comes in all shapes and sizes. It's something that we should all be sharpening our own iron. Culture, yes, she is, Jen. Culture is what breathes this. Culture is what creates this energy. Culture is what makes people want to be warriors. It's what makes them want to stay relevant. It's what makes them want to get up every day when it's hard, right? Operationally, we were with a client yesterday, and like selling a bunch of stuff. Operationally, they got to deliver. It's a balancing act of how do you do this and how do you do that. One of the gentlemen that's very, very important in the execution of the operational side. I'm talking about Jeff P. That's what I'm talking about here, yep. Dave. I loved his response. I mean, when we talked about it and I said, hey, we got to do these things and these things so we can forecast these things. So Jeff P's ready to go do his thing. And his answer was basically, yeah, that's important, but we'll get it done. I mean, he's relevant. Yeah. I mean, when he said we'll get it done, I was like, okay, we'll get it done.
And he has a plan. I mean, he's thought through this stuff. Yeah, I think one of the things to kind of wrap all this together, in the culture piece is we talked about being a warrior and all that. As a business owner, to develop that culture, you need to do a couple things. We talked about cast a vision, set and maintain high standards, be empathetic to your people, listen to what they have to say and do what they have to say. And the final thing that Phil brought up, and we haven't talked about this a lot, is but you have to continually educate yourself and learn, because let's just talk technology. It's changing every year and a half. It's advancing. If you're 50-something years old and you're not keeping up with that, it's going to be hard. If you're 20 and not keeping up with it, it's going to be hard, because what can be done now is way different than what can be done 10 years ago.
No doubt.
So your team, especially if you have 20 to 30-year-olds on your team, they're aware of this. They're living it every day. I mean, your kids are doing it, right? So to maintain relevance, you need to continually understand what's changing in the world, to continually adapt to those changes. And frankly, that's why Warren Buffett is 80-something years old and is still relevant as a thought leader, because he has the same routine of education every day. He's always learning something new. He's always putting people around him that push him and challenge him. And if you're not doing that, it's going to be tough to maintain that great culture in your organization.
I read an article, or actually it was a video. It was an interview I watched on some podcast, and it was Elon Musk. And there's things about Elon Musk that I go, wow, what a stud. And then there's things about Elon Musk I go, wow, what a complete idiot. Now he's not, but some of his behavioral stuff he does at times makes you scratch your head and go, what the hell's he thinking? But he's a genius. We all know that, right? But they asked him, they said, where do you sleep? And he said, well, Monday through Friday, I sleep in my factory. What? Yeah, I sleep in my factory. Why do you sleep in your factory? Well, I think clearly here. I mean, when I was talking earlier about paying the price, here's a guy that's the richest man in the world who Monday through Friday sleeps in his factory because he thinks clearer there. And it's so important to his culture and his overall vision that he's casting that he's got. I mean, people expect Elon Musk to come up with creative new things every day. Now, think about that for a second. Think about the immense pressure that man lives under every day. People expect him not to be good, not to be great. They expect him to be brilliant. They expect him to be perfect every day. I mean, so people like that are wired differently, right? They're just wired differently. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just who they are. And that's one thing too, Dave, before we wrap this up. You got to understand who you are. You got to understand why you're doing the things you're doing. The reality is this: I love my family. Dave, you're the same way. We do the stuff we do because we want to balance between our business lives and our quality of life with our families, the time we get to spend with them, the things we get to do, the experiences we get to have. So it's a balancing act, right? I'm if you want to put it in, equate it to toughness, Elon Musk is a freaking special operator that's been in combat for 30 years, and I'm a freaking fetus, right? Because that's the choice I made. It doesn't, there's nothing wrong with that. But you got to identify who you are, what's important to you, why you want to do it, and then you got to execute with excellence in mind to that every day. Matt, my dear friend, said, great leaders are respected without demanding it. 100% true. Yep. I mean, I always talk about Colonel Carstensen, anytime I talk, and you've heard me bring up Colonel C a gazillion times. It's because the man had such an effect on my life. I mean, I remember we were at a competition years ago with a bunch of different people from all the different branches of the military, and we're doing this 4 or 5 day competition. And I realize now it was basically so all the generals and everybody could have side bets and talk about who's better. But it was this competition, and it was about tactics, and it was obstacle course, and it was, all these different things, right? They'd put you in these different scenarios. And we're at the competition getting ready to compete. And when I knew we were going to win was the day of the competition. We get up, we're ready to go. We can't find Colonel C. He's out PTing. I mean, he's 55, 56 years old at the time. He's out PTing. I mean, this guy, he had the same routine every day. I said, well, competition starts today. He goes, well, right. I do this every day. There are no days off. He wasn't going to deviate from it. This is what I do. As I'm sitting there talking about Colonel C, I realize I need to reestablish some of those things with him. But it's because you get lazy. You and I've talked about this. A few years ago, I got lazy with my own success. I got lazy with I didn't have to go work very hard. right? And you and I talked about it one day, and I said, I don't like this version of me. I don't like this, so I got to fix this. And so, you're always going to have ebb and flows. You're always going to have things. You're always going to have things that are going to impact how you approach things in your life. If you find yourself in a situation you don't like the way it's going, the good news is all you got to do is you got to change it. If you're still upright, you can change it. You can make change. And last thing I'm going to say, I'll let you wrap it up. I want to read this because I want people to. And Matt, again, my friend Matt, he said, I owe it to my parents to advance the quality of life for my family and community as much as they did for us. And he had tremendous parents. Unfortunately, Matt's father's no longer with us, but his mom's still with us, Carmen, and great people. Ate many, many dinners at their house growing up. Wonderful people. And we had a lot of people like the Wilson family in the little town I grew up in that cared about other people more than they cared about themselves, cared about their community, invested in their community to the detriment of themselves sometimes, right? Because they cared enough. Those are real leaders. Those are people that really care, and I think, if you want to be one of those people, the good news is if you don't think you're doing it right now, change it. Go do it.
All right. So to sum it up, your windshield in your car is bigger than the rear view window for a reason, right?
Yep.
So forget about the past. You can change, stay, and keep moving forward. Do the things, take the steps that you need to take to build a great team and build a great winning culture in your organization, and everything will be fine. So with that, Dave and Phil, we are out of here.